Good evening, everyone. This is a review of the two quizzes you have taken so far. The first quiz was on architecture and deployment. And the first question here says the cheapest deployment model of IT is. And we talked about that in the presentation, and we said it's really to rent through the cloud, especially if you are a small organization. It's much more expensive if you build it yourself. With prepackaged solutions, it is cheap, but then the maintenance cost is high. With the consulting firm, they actually make you pay consulting fees. So the cheapest would be to rent through the cloud. The second question says the goal of information technology nowadays is to allow departments to act independent of each other. That's actually the opposite. We want to integrate between different departments. To increase data redundancy. Again, an opposite of that is the goal is to reduce. You don't want to repeat data because that will create inconsistency. Integrate across the different functional units. Provide answers to all organizational problems. C is the most logical because you want to really integrate across the different functional units. There is no IT that has been created so far that will provide answers to all organizational problems. Your third question is the recent increase in U.S. productivity is mainly attributed to the use of the internet and enterprise systems. Is that true or false? Definitely that's true. All of the following are effects of an IT on U.S. industries except we have few major players, fierce competition, big difference in the performance of the leaders and the laggers, increase in the cost of IT supported operations. The last one is not correct because if you see every now and then you hear about a company buying smaller companies. There is very fierce competition. There is also a big difference between those who are leaders and adopt new technology and those that are laggers. The next question then. Says the main objective of IT in all organizations should be to reduce the cost of operation. That's actually a false. It's not. In some organizations, it is to support innovation. In others, to improve the quality. So in all organizations, it may not be just to reduce the cost of operation. Question number 6, the heavy use of technology in everyday activities resulted in the erosion of social life. That's true. We all see the effect of social media, texting, mobile technology. All of these have actually reduced the amount of time we take to socialize with others in a natural setting. When adopting a new technology, you must make sure it is aligned with the corporate strategy. You want to make sure that, as we said, you are not just buying the latest and greatest. You are actually buying a technology that will help you achieve your strategic objectives. So it is not the corporate culture, because the culture may not be productive. Again, employee values may or may not conflict with the organizational goals. And what's happening in the market, again, may not be aligned with the objectives of the organization. So the most important thing is to align technology with the corporate strategy. An information technology department should be run as a cost center. That's a false. We said that We have to move away from looking at IT as a cost center to it being a profit center. IT should be responsible for generating profits. Which type of IT deployment is the cheapest in terms of maintenance cost? It is the cloud. The main objectives of the IT are all of the following except replicate data across different departments. That's not an objective. Definitely that's not an objective. Data sharing across the different departments. Yes, we want to improve data sharing. Improve organizational performance, whether through reducing cost or improving quality or increasing innovation. That's definitely a yes. Supporting decision making, that's a yes. So the only one that doesn't make sense is replicate data across different departments. We definitely do not want to replicate data because that will lead to inconsistencies. Parts of the IT architecture are layers of hardware and software. That's true. We said the IT architecture has 6 components. Hardware and software are 2 of the 6 components. The IT architecture refers to hardware, software, people, and processes, all of the above. It is all of the above, along with databases and networks. Choose all the challenges that you believe we currently face because of the use of technology. Lack of privacy, yes. Obesity, yes. Increasing the gap between the rich and the poor, yes. Electronic surveillance, yes. E-wastes, yes. Lack of information, that's a no. Well, lack of privacy, we said, because everything is monitored, so there is no privacy anymore, and there are sensors, and you are always tracked. Obesity, because of lack of movement. We are all the time sitting in front of our computers. We're not moving as we used to move before. Increasing the gap between the rich and the poor. The poor do not have access to electronic resources. So the gap continue to increase between the rich who have access to all of the resources and the poor that do not. Electronic surveillances, we know that in 3 years from now, there will be sensors to everything that you use, collecting information about you and keeping track of what you are doing. So there will be electronic surveillance, of course, and they are now already available. E-wastes are electronic wastes. We say that a lot of times employees, for example, are using computers for non-work related activities, like using it for Facebook or social media. We also have a lot of applications that are being used with only 20% of these application features being utilized. So definitely there is e-waste. A horizontally oriented IT architecture refers to an architecture that is customized to the individual needs of each functional area. No. A fragmented architecture, that's the opposite. An architecture that is standardized across the functional areas. An integrated architecture where software across the organization can communicate and share information. That's it. Horizontally oriented IT architecture, meaning that it is tying the whole organization. It is an integrated architecture. And the last question, among the problems that organizations experience with their architecture is standardization. Well, that's actually an objective. You want to standardize the architecture in order to minimize maintenance cost and to improve integration. So that's not a problem. Fragmentation is because when the architecture is fragmented, that makes it hard to integrate between the different systems. High integration is not a problem. So the the right answer is fragmentation. And that's all for the first quiz. Okay, this is quiz number 3, and it was about cloud computing. And first question asked, all of the following are advantages of a public cloud except. So low cost is definitely an advantage. All maintenance is taken care by the provider is an advantage. Single tenancy, that's a complete opposite actually. Single tenancy meaning that one company is hosted by the server. Only one company is hosted by the server, and that's against the idea of a public cloud. Public cloud is based on multi-tenancy. So C is incorrect. Among the advantages of machine virtualization are, we said machine virtualization is the partitioning, divisioning of one machine to act as if it is several machines. So better utilization of servers, energy efficiency, flexibility in reallocation of CPU power and memory resources among the different partitions, all of the above. You have better utilization of the server because now instead of leaving it 60% idle, you are dividing it into different partitions and let each partition handle a certain load. Of course, it's energy efficiency. Instead of having to buy 3 machines, now you have 1 machine acting like 3. Flexibility in reallocation of the CPU power and memory resources, that's part of the operating system, the virtual, the VM, for example, operating system that allow one computer to keep on reallocating CPU power, processing power, and memory between the different partitions. It is more effective for all organizations to adopt the cloud rather than build or buy their software. Yes, that's true. But it is not for all organizations. We said oil and gas and healthcare are not cannot adopt the cloud because of regulations, federal regulations that prevent healthcare. And in the case of oil and gas, because of competitive advantage. So whenever you see all organizations, you have to think a little bit about it. So this is false. Choose all that are applicable to cloud hosting. Scalability, yes. You are able to scale up or down. Instant access to resources, yes. Cost reduction, yes. Less storage, no. You get more storage. The more storage you need, the more is allocated to you. So that's definitely is incorrect, number D. An example of SaaS, SaaS stands for Software as a Service type of clouds, is Dropbox and Salesforce. That's true. They are both our applications. Dropbox are for storing and sharing files. Salesforce is for managing your salespeople that you have. They are both applications, so. It is more expensive to host applications on the public cloud than to host them internally on dedicated servers. That's false. It's actually less expensive. One of the disadvantages of PaaS is a platform as a service, and we said that it is the renting of software development tools along with the hardware. So is a longer life cycle for software development? That's false. Why? Because now you have the tools already installed. They are supported by the vendor. So all you have to do is just like write the code. So definitely you'll have a shorter life cycle for software development, not a longer one. PaaS limits developers to the development tools offered by the PaaS provider. That's true. You cannot add any more tools than what they offer you. So you just choose from what they have. Machine virtualization allow more than one operating system to run on the same machine. That's true. So actually, I wanted to explain the previous question. If you are running Mac and you virtualize the machine, you can run Windows and iOS and OS on the same machine. When hosting your website on a cloud, you need to manage the hardware to make sure it's reliable and secure. That's false. Once space is allocated to you, you cannot scale it up. That's false. You can scale up or scale down depending on demand, so you only pay for what you consume. That's true. You run the risk that other companies can access your own data. That's false. So C is the only correct answer. When using services of a cloud, an organization is priced based on its size, the industry the company belongs to, the number of employees within a company, the amount of resources they consume over the cloud. That's the right answer. We said that the cloud is consumption-based pricing, which means it all depends upon what you are consuming, the resources that you are utilizing, and that's how you pay your dues every month. Which of the following types of cloud allow companies to rent hardware? This is just the hardware. That's infrastructure as a service. Which of the following type of clouds offer users development tools to build their own application on the cloud? Now, when we talk about tools, that PaaS, platform as a service. A purchase order is validated by. Now, here we are going into purchasing. So it asks you, a purchase order is validated by what? Remember, we said that a purchase order cannot be created in some organization unless you have a requisition. So a requisition will validate the purchase order, while an invoice is validated by a purchase order. So when you want to pay an invoice, you should have a purchase order to compare the invoice against. When you are trying to validate the purchase order, you look back at the requisition. Has it been approved? Is this exactly what they approved? The item that appears on the requisition is the same as the one on the purchase order? If there is a price on the requisition, you're trying to make sure that the price on the requisition that has been approved is also the same as the purchase order. An IaaS control that is built in within the purchasing cycle is the setting of multiple authorizations on purchasing requisitions at different organizational levels. What the question is saying is that if you want to get a requisition approved, you need to have it approved by multiple people at different organization levels. So you have a supervisor, a manager, and maybe the CFO if it is a large amount of money involved. So that's true. In SAP, you can copy an inquiry or a quotation to an order. That's true. One of the pre-sale documents that a vendor would have to create is a purchase order. A vendor does not create a purchase order. It's actually the customer, the one who wants to buy, creates the purchase order, because the purchase order is a request to send items. So that's false. Number 18, please order the following documents by order of the creation in the purchasing cycle. So the first thing that we create is a request for quotation. Based on the quotations that we receive, we are going to reject or accept some. When we receive the goods, we create a goods receipt. And the last phase of the purchasing cycle is actually outgoing payment. Running the pick release would create. Now, the pick release, first, this is in the sales and distribution cycle when we are selling. So the first thing, I create a sales order. When I get a purchase order from the customer, I respond by creating a sales order. And then I check inventory, and if everything is okay, I create a delivery note telling the warehouse to release that amount. And then the second would be a pick release, is actually allowing the warehouse to move material from one part of the warehouse to another so that it gets packaging. When I ship, I post the goods issue. So the pick release is a move order. I want to move things from the warehouse to the packaging area. It is not a ship confirm. I do not confirm shipping. It's the post goods issue that confirms the shipping. Of course, I cannot invoice unless I have shipped. So it's not C, and of course D is not. But the right answer is a move order. The auto invoice process run right after a pick release. We've just explained that I cannot invoice unless I ship. So the pick release will not create an automatic invoice. It's only when I do the post goods issue, and that's a ship confirm. And that's all for the quiz reviews 2 and 3.